You've got to stop drilling LSAT questions by type. This will work to a point, of course, but once you're scoring 160, 165, it often comes down to understanding the method of reasoning in the stimulus. Today, I'm going to walk you through what I would do if I wanted to ace the LSAT logical reasoning section, which is more important than ever before, since going forward, it's going to be 2/3 of the test. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175 on test day. And the funny thing is that if you actually take the time to understand the argument, the LSAT becomes a whole lot easier. One thing we do with our students at LSAT Unplugged is we'll take students who are scoring well and we'll help them score even better by taking a question type they don't like and turning into one that they do like. So for example, let's say we have a student who really doesn't like flaw questions, but they do like weakened questions. We'll take a given flaw question and we'll transform it into a weakened question, another angle, another perspective from which to understand the argument. A little bit of manipulation of the question stem and the answer choices can oftentimes make the question that much easier. This is just one of the tools in our toolbox using the Socratic review method, which is a cornerstone of our courses and our one-on-one LSAT coaching programs. If you're interested in finding out more, you can check out the links below this video to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, what we do with the Socratic review method is we make sure that you actually understand what is the argument saying. Can you rewrite it or explain it to us in your own words without looking at the text of the stimulus? Do you understand the question stem and what it is asking you to do? Do you understand the answer choices? What makes a wrong answer choice tempting for you and what ultimately makes it wrong? What perhaps possibly makes a right answer choice unappealing and what ultimately makes it correct? Because you have these traps of encouragement towards the wrong answer and traps of discouragement away from the right answer. And until you understand what tricks you're falling for, what mistakes you're making, and why, you can't help but making the same mistake again, because the LSAT, of course, repeats itself again and again and again. So to achieve a top score, and I'm talking here 170, 175 plus, it's not just about knowing what is a strengthening question, what is a weakened question, what is a flaw question. It's not just applying strategies that you learned from someone else. It is understanding why the strategies work and better understanding the LSAT from the test maker's perspective, which is what the Socratic review method helps you do. Now, I mentioned earlier, this is all regardless of question type. If you're still having trouble with the basics, of course, you want to make sure that you understand conditional indicator words for necessary and sufficient conditions, evidence and conclusion indicator words. These will carry you far. And if you don't know them, of course, you're going to be in trouble. You want to make sure, of course, foundational table stakes, you understand the most common types of logical reasoning questions like necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. But to reach that next level, to get a top score, you're going to need to understand all arguments regardless of question stem type. As I mentioned earlier, this is more important than ever before because the importance of the logical reasoning section is doubled now that they've replaced the logic game section with a second scored logical reasoning section. Any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning will be doubled across the two sections. Now, I mentioned earlier the three most common logical reasoning types: necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. I'm going to share with you three quick related wins for logical reasoning, one for each of these types, that you can implement right away. You want to make sure that you understand properly the difference between necessary assumption questions and sufficient assumption questions. This is oftentimes low-hanging fruit because some prep companies don't properly distinguish between the two. They lump them together under the catch-all category of assumption. This is, of course, a huge mistake because necessary assumption and sufficient assumption are asking you for radically different things. Within the category of inference questions, you want to make sure that you understand the difference between must be true questions and most strongly supported questions. Small, nuanced difference, very important difference. Now, flaw questions are one of the most common types, and people often confuse weaken and flaw. Weakening an argument does not mean destroying the argument, and weakening an argument does not necessarily mean that the argument is prone to some classic logical fallacy. The argument may not be beyond hope or beyond repair. It just means there's some gap in the argument for weaken, and we're looking to further exploit or widen that gap between evidence and conclusion. So if you're not clear on these three distinctions I mentioned earlier, make sure that you become clear on them sooner rather than later. Focus on mastering these most common question types before focusing on the rare or less common types, like evaluate the argument, cannot be true, must be false, parallels that show up a lot less often. Of course, in our programs, we cover all of the 15 or so different types of logical reasoning questions, plus the most important methods of reasoning as well, because as I mentioned earlier, it's not always about question STEM type. Now, if you're already scoring 165 or above, oftentimes at that point, traditional prep courses, on-demand videos, group classes oftentimes are not going to help you because you need personalized support to help you reach that next level. If you'd like my help, you can feel free to reach out using the links below. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.